Good morning, beautiful souls, and welcome back to my channel. Let's dive in. I've been talking about listening in recent episodes, but today I want to talk about something different, but that's related to listening. Have you ever noticed that the more accommodating you are, the more people expect from you? That your yes becomes so automatic that people stop even asking, they just assume. Maybe you're always the one picking up extra shifts because you're so good at handling everything or getting everything done at the office because you are the one that will get it done. You're the friend that everyone calls in crisis, but nobody checks on you when you're struggling. Or your family just expects you to handle all the emotional labor because you are the organized one. You are the one who can handle it. And they actually tell you that, well, we didn't support you because you can handle it. Somewhere along the way, you realize that kindness has become your cage. And so today we're talking about what happens when people take your kindness for granted and how to reclaim your generosity without losing your voice and how to maintain your voice in this place. Also be kind, but also set boundaries. Now, I used to think that was I being fake by being kind? No, I just look at my family and the way that I was raised, even by my parents, it was just about, treat people the way that you want to be treated. And so that was a lot of kindness. There wasn't a lot of bitter backstabbing or taking advantage of people. So I've learned this from my family. I talk about the things that the I don't want to call them negative, but the patterns that I picked up from my culture, from my family, just around communication that didn't serve me that well, that weren't in my highest. But there are a lot of amazing things that I learned from my culture within my family that I feel like I embody, and I'm proud to embody that. I'm a kind person. I know I'm a kind person. I think of others. There's been a line where I was thinking of others more than I was thinking of myself, but I do think of others. And one thing that I've realized in the past couple of weeks in unmuting and finding my voice is that people have taken my kindness for granted. And I want to even bring this into tangible, concrete instance of a contractor in my house getting work done, and I needed an invoice. Now, this contractor took a long time to get work done. I would say this contractor is a friend, but we were also paying this contractor. We weren't taking any shortcuts to have this work done. We were paying this person as a contractor, but they weren't getting a specific thing done with me. And I was getting really frustrated. And I noticed every time I reached out to say, hey, where is this? Where is it? We need this. We paid you. You need to get this for us. I was getting this happened in my family. I'm overwhelmed. They were putting their emotional burdens on me. And I thought, why the heck is this happening? We paid you. You should be getting this to us without any question. And what I came to realize is they took my kindness for weakness, oh, well, Priya's kind. Priya's the nicest person that I've ever met. So therefore, I don't have to do the same things with her that I would do with another client. And it just really was another moment in time where it just enraged me to think, wait, all this time you've been thinking I'm kind or saying that I'm kind, but then you took it for granted. Has that ever happened to you that you felt that you were taken for granted for just trying to be a nice person? And let's talk about what happens when people take our kindness for granted. Because when somebody consistently takes your kindness for granted, friends, family, intimate partners, they're not listening to you. They're not. They're not seeing the person behind the generosity. They're seeing the opportunity. They're just consuming what you have to offer without recognizing the choice you're making to give it. If you ever felt like generosity or your generosity has become an expectation rather than a gift for someone, this conversation's for you. So let's dive in some more. So let me paint a picture of what this will look like in real life because I have a feeling you're going to recognize it. Let's talk about it as far as family dynamics. You're always the one who remembers birthdays, sends out a card, sends out a text, planning gatherings, checks in on everyone. And then when you're going through something difficult, crickets. You find yourself still taking care of everyone because that's just what you do. And when you finally need support, people are genuinely surprised, like, "What?" They forgot you have your own struggles. Or if you actually start speaking up and advocating for yourself, they actually start saying, "What happened to you? You've changed." They're not used to that person who's actually speaking up for themselves, who's unmuting, who's finding their voice and actually using it. They're used to the person that said, "Yes, sure, I'm there for you at any time. Please use me." Um, and they get used to that. Let's talk about at work. How does this look at work? You're the one who stays late to help colleagues. You cover for people when they're out. You take extra projects because you don't mind helping. And then these become expectations. You're expected to do this at any time. Well, and then people are actually forwarding you emails, sending you texts about opportunities because rather than getting it done themselves because they assume that you're going to get it done. And then your willingness to help and your being kind and that helpful person, that's been interpreted as, hey, this person, she or he, they're always available. They don't mind the extra workload. Let's talk about how this looks in friendships because in each situation, there's similarities, but then there's also very different things and how it manifests. So in friendships, you're the listener, you're the advisor, the one friends call when they need someone to vent to. But then when you try to share what's going on in your life, the conversations, some way, somehow, without you even realizing how this happened, circle back to their problems. Or, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. I can't help you right now. Your role has become so fixed as the supporter that people struggle to see you as someone who might actually need support. I remember a good friend of mine who was going through a breakup. Probably the second time, I was there for that person. I was helping them move in and out of their homes and there to support them. Then, when I was going through a breakup and I leaned on this person for support, guess what I got? "Hey, I'm too busy right now. I've taken on extra shifts. I don't really have time to talk," which left a deep wound and hole in my heart that people aren't there for me. I was, when I was helping her out, I was doing it out of the kindness of my heart because I saw suffering. I don't want people to suffer and I want to help people. Yet I thought this person was going to be there for me when I was suffering and that it didn't work out that way. Let's talk about in romantic relationships, and you may resonate with this. You're the one who compromises on restaurants. You really want to go out to Italian, but you're choosing Mexican for the benefit of the other person because they've grumbled and you want to be nice. You want it to be a good evening. And God forbid you went to a place that you liked and the evening gets ruined because the other person didn't like the restaurant. It's all your fault. You take on that burden. You give up your preferences for weekend plans. You give up the things that you enjoy doing to make the other person happy. You handle most of the emotional work of the relationship, which has always been my case. I handled it all. And when you finally express a preference or need, it's met with surprise, resistance, because your accommodating nature, the one that always says yes, the one who is kind and generous, has been mistaken for not having real needs. Now, here's the question I want you to sit with. In how many of your relationships has your kindness become so expected that people have stopped seeing it as a choice that you are making? They're just assuming and they're taking it for granted because that's what we're talking about here. When kindness becomes expected, it's not received as a gift anymore. They're taking it as an entitlement. It's essentially being taken. They're not taking it as, wow, thank you, Priya. I really appreciate that you did this for me. It's like, okay, I know you're going to do this for me. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do any work. Let's talk about why this happens. So I often talk about cultural programming. Now, this could be related to your individual culture. I'm Asian Indian. It could be within that. It could be within the framework of your country. It could be within the framework of the society, the community that you're in and where you're raised. So to understand why your kindness gets taken for granted, we need to look at how we're socialized, especially as women. Now, I could speak to women, and sometimes I get comments on here from men saying, well, yeah, women do it too. I'm sure I'm not here to man hate or say anything against men. So from childhood, we're taught that our value is tied to how helpful, accommodating, and selfless we are. We've talked about this before. Good girls don't make waves. They don't have too many needs. They're flexible, understanding, and always willing to put others first. As I told you, when I went to India, the neighbor actually said, your purpose on earth here is to procreate. That was it. She was telling me I was supposed to be accommodating and selfless to my husband for the purposes of having children. And that's just one example within my culture. But think about what you've been conditioned to believe about making waves, about speaking up. We learn phrases like, it's better to give than receive, and don't be selfish, before we even understand what healthy boundaries look like. We're praised for being mature for our age, which usually means we're suppressing our own needs to make other people comfortable. And I can speak to this because this was my story. And then by the time we're adults, now, yes, legally we become adults at 18, but I didn't really fully come into myself as being an adult who can make decisions for herself until about 42 or so. But by the time we're adults, many of us have internalized the belief that our worth depends on how much we can give to others without asking for anything in return. We're the givers, constant givers, and people learn to be the takers. So I want to talk about the psychology of takers. We need to understand something about the people who take our kindness for granted, because they're not necessarily malicious. Now, most people are operating from their own conditioning and patterns. Some people learn to receive without reciprocating because that's how they survived in their own family dynamics. Others genuinely don't recognize the emotional labor and thoughtfulness behind actions because no one modeled that awareness for them. They just like, oh, great, this person does this. So they're unaware. And like I said, let's be honest, some people have learned that there are people in their lives who will always say yes, will accommodate, always handle things. And why would they change a dynamic that works so well for them? Why would you change that, right? So they get used to that. And when you change that dynamic and actually stand up for yourself, they're shocked, they're surprised, they're taken back, they're offended. So I want to go deeper into takers and the three type of people who take kindness for granted. We've talked about the unconscious taker, the person who genuinely doesn't realize how much you're giving or how little they're reciprocating. They're not intentionally exploiting your kindness. They're just not aware. And when you point it out, they're usually willing to make changes. Now let's talk about the entitled taker. This person has come to believe that your kindness is something they deserve rather than something you choose to give. They've mistaken your generosity for obligation. And when you try to set boundaries, they often respond with guilt trips or anger because you're disrupting their comfort. The strategic taker. This person is aware of the imbalance. They know, and they continue to benefit from it. They might even use manipulation or emotional tactics to keep you in that giving role. They're the hardest to deal with because they're consciously choosing to exploit your kindness. And so that's been my experience with the three types of takers. Why do we allow it? I had to look deep within myself. Anytime you're doing self-reflection, it can be a painful process because it comes back to, why did I let these people into my life? I want to acknowledge something really important. If people are taking your kindness for granted, yeah, you've likely been trained to allow it. And it's not victim blaming, it's recognition. Many of us were taught that setting boundaries around our generosity makes us selfish. We learn that saying no to requests makes us mean. We internalize the idea that love means endless availability. And we also use our kindness as a way to feel valued or valuable and needed. There can be an unconscious payoff to being the person that everyone relies on. It makes us feel important, irreplaceable, worthy. But then what happens when you do stand up for yourself and you're not perceived as kind anymore? I've had so many people leave my life because of that, because I stood up for myself. Priya's not the nice one anymore. What happened to you? You changed. Yes. And when somebody says that to me now, hey, Priya, you changed, I say, thank you for noticing, because I would hate to be the same person I was last week, 2 years ago. I'm constantly evolving. Here's the thing. There's a difference between choosing to be generous and feeling obligated to be generous. When kindness becomes compulsive rather than conscious, it stops serving everyone involved. So, what does that mean? When your kindness just becomes so automatic that you're doing it because you don't know anything else, rather than, you know what? I am interacting with this person and I'm aware that I'm conscious that I'm going to be kind to this person, just being the observer of this. That's the difference. But so when you're doing it out of habit, it stops serving everyone involved. Let's talk about some signs that your kindness is being taken for granted. People assume your availability without asking. They call you last minute, say, hey, can you do this? Because you're the yes person. Last minute, you might actually be able to do it. But it takes a big step. It takes some inner power to be able to say, all right, and have a conscious conversation within yourself saying, I don't have anything to do today, but why do they think they can just call me last minute? No, I'm not going to do it. I need advance notice for this. It's a lot of work, but as you do it more, it gets easier and easier to do. And your intuition will actually guide you through that process where you're about to say yes, but it doesn't feel good within. Another sign, your no is met with surprise, guilt trips, or pressure to change your mind. People reach out only when they need something. Your own needs and struggles are minimized or ignored. And even your wants or your desires become ignored. I was just talking with my sister this morning, and I was talking about this past relationship and reflecting on it. When I got into this relationship with this person, I kept talking about how kind I was. And I was being myself. But I had a lot going for me. I was traveling all over the place. I was excited about doing different things into fitness, and I was my own person. And they invited me to their softball game. I'd never really gone, and I was never that person. Didn't grow up in a family where we went and watched sports. And I thought, yeah, this would be fun. And I remember sitting there in the stands and watching and thinking, okay, this is cool. Then it was the second time. Then it was the third time. Then it was the fourth time. And I remember saying to myself, I'm doing less of what I want so I can be here in the stands. And I'm being an observer. I'm on the sidelines in my own life. It was very parallel process and profound understanding that I was just watching myself. And it got worse and worse and worse, because when I was stating my needs that I didn't want to go, I got rejection, I got guilt trips, I got nasty behavior. And ultimately, I ended up going to quite a few games, which I hated because I was on the sidelines in my own life. You become resentful about things you once enjoyed doing. So that first game, if I had gone occasionally, yeah, maybe I would have enjoyed it. But then I started having to go more and more and more because I was the kind girlfriend, accommodating, who would do anything for her boyfriend. And I started to become really resentful. I hated it. And so that you might notice that this happens, that you start to feel resentful about the things you once enjoyed doing, even getting together for dinner with friends or having those phone conversations. You might find yourself doing things you don't want to do to avoid disappointing people. People make decisions that affect you without consulting you, assuming you'll accommodate. Now, this has happened numerous times in my life that people just assumed, oh yeah, it's Priya. Of course she'll take, it's fine. This goes back even way before college. And if I think about it, it really was amplified in college. People's like, oh yeah, go use Priya's computer. Where our dorm in college was the first to have Ethernet. Imagine that, back in 1995. And my dad is a techie, loved computers, had the first Commodore 64. So I had a computer because my dad was going to hook me up with a computer. And I would come back from class, getting ready to do work. Everybody was on my computer. Oh, and I'm like, I need to use the computer. And they were like, well, I'm working right now. There was a cost to my kindness. People were taking advantage of me even back then. Your boundaries are tested or ignored repeatedly. Now, if you notice in this list of things that I'm giving you about signs that your kindness is being taken for granted. There's parallels between all of these. All of these are interconnected. The biggest thing is that you feel more like a resource than a person in some relationships. You feel used. And this isn't to say, like I said, not victim blaming, it's not shaming, blaming, or any of that, but you feel used. So when your kindness is consistently taken for granted, several things happen that affect your well being and your relationships. The resentment builds. You start to feel bitter about your generosity. You start to hold back. And now, if you're at a place where you're wanting abundance, you notice that things start to leave your life. Money starts to flow out because you're in this place of lack and constriction. That generosity, that heartfelt giving that came from you, you're now blocking it off because of this resentment. And it's having a ripple effect in every area of your life. You find yourself internally keeping score, noticing every time you're giving without receiving. The loving actions you take start to feel burdensome because they're not being received with gratitude or reciprocated with care. And this was the case with this partner that I'm often talking about. This channel is a manifestation of being in that relationship because said I need to start speaking up and supporting women who also might have been in an abusive, narcissistic relationship. And maybe some of the patterns overlap if you're a male and you're in a relationship with a woman and you're noticing these patterns. I was doing things out of kindness, out of love for this other person. And initially they were shocked by these acts of generosity from me. But then I noticed there wasn't even a thank you after a while. After a couple of years, there was no thank you. There was an assumption that I was going to do something nice. Went out to eat. There was an assumption that I was going to pay. Meanwhile, they told this narrative, oh, I wasn't raised that way. My mom told me that I need to take care of this. And then I started keeping score. Well, I paid for this and I paid for that. I did this and I did that. You didn't do any of this. I became so resentful and angry. You lose touch with your own needs. When you're constantly focused on what others need from you, you can forget what you need for yourself. You become so practiced at accommodating others that you lose access to what you want, what you need, what you desire, what you love. I remember when I was at a really low point and in therapy, the therapist asked me, hey, Priya, what do you like to do? What do you want? I said, I don't like to do anything. And he said, no, that's not true. You have a lot going for you. I could not access that because I lost touch with my own needs from giving so much, from having my kindness taken for granted and having it replace that love and generosity with resentment. Now, this one's a big one. Burnout becomes inevitable. You can't pour from an empty cup indefinitely. When you're always giving without receiving, you eventually hit a wall where you have nothing left to give. And often that burnout's met with more demands than recognition of what you've been carrying. Does that resonate with you? Let's talk about the cost of this. It's not just personal, it's relational. Relationships become one-sided. You know, we're human beings. We rely on relationships in our daily life, whether it's that interaction at the grocery store, the thank you, whether it's going to the doctor, whether it's in work, walking into a place and greeting people. Everything is relationships. But when you're giving from that empty cup, relationships become one-sided. When one person is always giving and the other one is receiving, now that can be in the form of anything, not just gifts, not just love and energy. It could be in the form of listening and talking. You're the listener, always there to listen. When it's time for you to speak, crickets. So when you're in this place of constantly giving and the other is always receiving, you don't have a reciprocal relationship. Nope. You're in a caretaking dynamic. And that's where I realized I had this inner understanding within myself that I created and wherever it came from, all my experiences, that I had to caretake. I had to take care of people. And I didn't have to worry about if they were taking care of me. And this creates distance rather than intimacy, because true connection, you need reciprocity. You need a mutual connection, mutual actions. People don't really know you. When your role in relationships is always to give, support, and accommodate, people don't learn about your depth. They don't know who you are at your core. They don't know your struggles, your dreams. They don't know if you speak another language. They don't know who you are. They know you as a function, action, rather than as a full person. They don't know you at your soul level, nor do they want to get to know you at your soul level. And guess what? Your voice gets smaller. When your value in relationships is tied to your usefulness and your kindness, you learn not to take up space with your own needs, your opinions, your voice, your problems. And as I say in many of my episodes, you become smaller to accommodate everyone else's bigness. What is the spiritual cost of this? When kindness becomes compulsive, right, and we're doing it not from a place of consciousness and awareness, it stops being kind. Real kindness comes from choice, from overflow, from genuine care. When we are resentful and now in a place of lack and keeping score, we're not in overflow anymore. We're in contraction. Compulsive give and offering comes from obligation, fear, the need to feel valuable, fear of rejection. And when people take your kindness for granted, they're not receiving the gift of your authentic generosity, the one that's from overflow, from your heart. They're consuming your people-pleasing behavior, and that doesn't serve anyone. So what do we do when we're in this place? Step one, always the thing, awareness, recognizing the pattern. The first step to changing any dynamic is becoming conscious of where it's showing up in your life. Take some time to honestly ask yourself these questions as you think about the relationships in your life. I even journaled on this and wrote down all the different relationships in my life and just took some time to process, okay, where do I feel like my kindness is expected rather than appreciated? Which relationships feel one-sided in terms of giving and receiving? Where do I say yes when I want to say no? Who in my life would be genuinely surprised if I needed support and said, hey, can you help me with this? And it's not about keeping score, no, or becoming bitter, right? We want to release these things, release these chains so that we're not resentful and bitter, because ultimately the people who are being affected by being resentful and being bitter and keeping score and in contraction, it's us. It's about getting clear on the dynamics you want to change. Step two is boundaries. So awareness, boundaries, and having kindness with limits. Here's an idea. You can be kind and have boundaries. You can be generous and discern who you want to be generous with. You can care about people and prioritize your own well-being. Boundaries around your kindness might look like, I'm not available to help with this right now, but I can help you out another time, or somebody's contacting you last minute to do something. Sorry, I'm not available, but if you let me know with advance notice, I can make myself available. You can even say things like, I've noticed I've been doing most of the emotional work in this relationship. There needs to be a more balance because I'm getting burnt out. The right person will hear you in that. The wrong person will dismiss you and possibly walk away from you. And that might be the best gift that you've ever been given. I care about you, but I can't be your only source of support for this issue. You need to call somebody else or get professional help for this. I can't be your only person. And another thing you can say is, I'm happy to support when I can, but I need you to ask me rather than assume that I'm available. A boundary is not mean. It's honest. And in order to sustain relationships, the ones that you want in your life, it's important and it's necessary. Now, the third step, speaking your truth, right? Unmuting. Part of reclaiming your kindness is using your voice to educate people about how to treat you better. Many people don't realize, they genuinely don't realize the impact of taking your kindness for granted because no one's ever explained it to them. This might sound like, hey, I want to talk about the dynamic in our relationship. I feel like I've been doing a lot of giving and I'm really spent from that. I'm depleted. Can we talk about this? You can say, and I wish I had said this to the partner. I've trained you to expect certain things from me, but I'm making some changes for my own well-being. In this case, I actually just started to make the changes without talking to the person because by that time, I realized this person was never going to hear me. Now, if this is a relationship, as you go through your list of people and evaluating and assessing, is this somebody that I want in my life? You can say something like, I value our relationship and I want to continue being supportive, but I need to feel valued and supported in return. Now, step 4, got a couple more steps. Discernment. This is an important word. It's choosing where to invest your kindness. Guess what? If you're a kind person and you just have genuine love and compassion for people and you just want to give from an overflow, not everyone deserves that. You can give it from a distance and just offer them love from a distance. Not everyone has earned access to your generosity. And that's not selfish, that's wise. Your body, your intuition, as you practice this more, will actually tell you, hey, it's time to walk away. You're discerning this person is not going to benefit from your generosity or your kindness. Start paying attention to how your kindness is received. Who expresses genuine gratitude? And that gratitude can show up in so many different ways. A text message, a hug, or just when you see them, they're expressing that gratitude to you. Who reciprocates when you need support? Who's there for you? You're the listener. You're the kind person who's always there for people. But who reciprocates when you need support? Who respects your boundaries without pushing back? When you actually say these things to people and talk about your feelings and emotions and how you want to change the dynamic, who actually respects you? This partner, when I actually set boundaries, they mocked me and they pushed past those boundaries even more in some pretty disrespectful acts. Now, why I tolerated that, whole other topic. Who sees you as a whole person rather than just a resource? I got Priya that I can in my back pocket that can pull out at any time. They'll always be there. These are the relationships worth investing. These are people who deserve your continued generosity and your kindness and your love. Now, the 5th one is the most important of all. It's self-compassion, healing the pattern, and grace for yourself. You don't know what you know until you know, right? You are doing the best that you can in any given moment, given the tools that you've been given. So don't look back and say, oh my God, I can't believe I did this. No, because you didn't know before that. You need to offer yourself grace. You develop these giving behaviors for good reasons, maybe to feel loved, to avoid conflict, to feel valuable. And maybe it was modeled in your family to just be a kind and compassionate person, but don't rock the boat. It served you at one point, and it just may not be serving you anymore. And changing these patterns takes time, it takes awareness, takes discernment, and it takes the courage to say, hey, I want to shift something. This doesn't feel right for me anymore. And you might slip back into old habits. People might push back when you start setting boundaries. That's normal and it's expected. And be patient with yourself as you learn to give from choice rather than obligation. So, in closing, here's what I want you to understand. Your kindness is not a weakness. Your generosity is not a flaw. And your caring nature is not something you need to fix or suppress or get rid of. Do not change that part of you. It's the most beautiful part of you. But what you might need to change is how you express these beautiful qualities in your relationships. Looking at each of your relationships. Not all relationships were created equal. Kindness with boundaries is sustainable kindness. Generosity with discernment is meaningful generosity. And care with reciprocity is lasting care. When your kindness is respected and reciprocated, it builds deeper trust, intimacy in your relationships. You want to actually talk to that person. You want to make time to get together with them because you have trust in that relationship. When it's taken for granted, when your kindness is taken for granted, all it does is create resentment and distance. And you just say, I don't want to be anywhere near this person. You have the right to be generous and kind and to be appreciated. You have the right to give and to receive. You have the right to care about others and to require that they care about you too. That is not too much to ask. So I have some work for you for this week. Notice where in your life your kindness is getting taken for granted. You don't have to change anything yet. There's nothing you need to do. Just become aware. And you'll be surprised just how powerful awareness is. Where do you automatically say yes? Where do you automatically go to that kind, generous person and go from overflow, even though you feel super resentful? Where do you give more than you receive? Where do people assume that you're available without even asking? And if you're ready to dive deeper into this work of finding your voice and creating more balanced relationships, click the link below, www.unmutewithpriya.com, and you can get access to my free training with 4 steps to finding your voice in relationships. And for a limited time, you can apply for a free 20-minute coaching call with me. These are valued at $197, and I'm offering them free just for the first few people. So click the link below. And before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Where have you noticed that your kindness has been taken for granted? How did you handle it? Share it in the comments. Share your feedback so that we can all support each other, because I know I'm not the only one. And if you're watching this episode through the end, I know that you are realizing, hey, I'm not the only one either. I love you. I see you, and I believe in your right to be kind without sacrificing yourself. I believe in your right to start using your voice. Now, remember, when your kindness is respected, becomes a gift that enriches everyone. And when it's taken for granted, your voice has to rise up to protect it. So subscribe, like, and share this channel if this resonated with you, and I'll see you on the next episode.